Hi, I'm Dr. Bob Graykowski, creator of the Better Brain Blueprint. This week we're actually talking about starting to connect the brain and the body, the mind-body connection from a neurological point of view. There are so many things you might not realize of how we move our body and how that affects brain health, and it ultimately affects our highest purpose. It is critical, really, in today's world to look at health reform starts between our ears. It doesn't start in Washington. We must set up daily action steps, certain healthy rituals, so that over a period of time we are in a state of growth and healing and repair. If we're waiting for some outside force to affect us, we are looking at our health in an abnormal way. We are not looking the way it was designed. Our body heals from the inside out. So we have to look at how are we activating our brain. The activation of our nervous system can come about by our thoughts, certain thinkings that we constantly do over and over again that might create an abnormal healthy situation. Or what are we constantly ingesting? There's a term we use in our office called oral amnesia. What that means is sometimes we just forget at the end of the day of all the things that crossed our lips. And it could be not only the foods that we eat, but the things that we are constantly noshing or munching on, or maybe constantly eating Altoids, or chewing gum, or maybe the drinks that we drink. We forget about all those things, and all those have an activation process that affect our brain and nervous system and affect our overall health in the long term. Today is really about how the brain and the body and the upper spinal cord are connected. So if you look at the biggest challenge I hear from patients right now is they feel like they're losing their memory and they're forgetting things. It's like it's erasing things on a regular basis. If we're not constantly stimulating our brain, it will lose its activity. It will lose its strength and vitality over a period of years. The uppermost part of the neck is the most important level of the nervous system that ties in with our highest vision. This part of our brain, the prefrontal cortex, the front part of our brain has to do, it's called our executive action. It's the part that makes most of your decisions on a daily basis. And if we have stress on the upper cervical area, it affects the nerves at this point. So we're going to go in the learning experience over to the nerve pathway chart. So on the nerve pathway chart that I have next to me, it's pointing out that it's addressing what's called the first cervical. This is the top cervical. This is the part of our spine that has to do with the yes motion, the up and down motion. 50% of the movement of your neck takes place between the skull and that first vertebrae. If you look at a neurological point of view, it affects the front part of the brain, which is our executive section we just talked about. That is where it's our highest vision. That makes a lot of the conscious choices throughout the day. It also ties in with all these main areas that deal with your nervous system. Here's the problem. If you think about it, when we get older, are we more upright or are we more slumped and bent forward? The more that we have our head dropped forward, it puts stress on these little receptor points, the mechanoreceptors. That means how much stress should be put on those joints. This sends an impulse to the brain that affects the connection between the brain and the body. So our posture has neurological effects on our brain. This is the most important level of the nervous system. If you look at this area is where all the messages from the brain to the entire body has to come through. So if we're in a slumped position all the time, here's what we see in today's world. What are people doing when they're texting? What are they doing when they're reading? Dropping your head forward constantly puts stress on this area. This affects your higher levels of making decisions. It affects a very important part of our brain process. It affects our coordination systems of the body also. So your posture affects not only decisions that you make, it affects your clarity of your brain, and ultimately affects your memory processes. So we're going to be addressing this more at each individual level of the spine and the nervous system, and how moving each one of those areas are so important, and how our posture can affect your brain health in the long run. This is another Better Brain Tip of the Week from Dr. Bob. Have an awesome week.